So this is my new little rescue Kovu, and that one is Quill. So I'm just going to start here. Where I left off with, where I'm at with Caesar now is he'll eat out of my hand, but he won't let me approach him or touch him or anything like that. So I thought initially I'll just show you those steps that I took before he got to that point. So Kovu here, he's got an eye ulcer and a cut there too, so I've had the vet out and he's getting that treated. But obviously, being completely unhandled, that's a very difficult thing to do, so I'm just going to work with him to hopefully gain his trust over the week. And like, I've got to put him in the run to treat his eye, but hopefully I can get him handled so that it's not so stressful for him. So what I always do initially with these kind of horses, very skittish and completely unhandled, is while they're eating, just sit somewhere close. I'm pretty close to him. Usually I'd sit a bit further away than this to start with, but we're in the stockyard and there's not a lot of space here, so, and also I'm trying to speed things up a little bit, but generally I would sit sort of just as far out in the paddock as they're comfortable with, which he's not uncomfortable here. Like, he's not running away or snorting at me or anything like that. He's just extremely he's got his eyes on me, so he doesn't really want me to move or do anything scary, so he's just keeping an eye on me. But if I were to go near him, he would freak out. He's got medication in his bucket, so I'm not going to do that, but you'll see that probably in later videos when I'm approaching him, just how scared he really is. So that's all for step one, really. It doesn't really matter how long this all takes unless you're in a rush for some reason like this, but it's better if you've got no agenda and you just want to sit in the paddock and you're not asking anything of them, you're not moving around or doing anything or trying to do anything really. You're just sitting there and letting them see you and sort of get to know what kind of a thing you are, because to them, they probably haven't really ever seen people before. If they have, it's been to push them into different yards and things, so they're probably quite they don't really want to accept a person into their life if they don't need that. So we've got to show them that they can trust us and that we're not going to push them around and make them do stuff, and that they can actually be friends with humans. So yeah, this is a good step one, and I will probably do a bit more videos with Kovu because he's the one that I'll be focused on. I've not been so focused on Caesar because of the floods and things. I've been quite busy, but obviously I'm going to have to put the time into Kovu very quickly so that I can get to his eye a bit easier. So we'll catch back up with Kovu in a couple of days and I'll show you guys the next sort of stuff that I do. So I'm just standing in the yard with Kovu, so we're going to look a little bit at his body language and just sort of see what he thinks about me and coming a bit closer. He's obviously had a lot to do with me up close to him in the run, but it's very different out here. He's sort of starting from scratch out here because in there you're not really training much, but he did get a little bit more used to me in there with our little bit of training that we did. But out here he has the freedom to go wherever he wants, and that's how it will generally always start. You never want to, if he didn't have his bung eye, I wouldn't be putting him in the run. So he's just watching me. I'm not going to try and approach, I'm not going to do anything. Just going to sit here and watch him. He's got a little bit of lip twitching going on there. He's sort of starting to not be so worried about me and I think relax a little bit with me being in this sort of close proximity. Still very focused on me. and now he's becoming a bit more curious. So moving the head around like that, I think, is a way I'm sort of, investigating a little bit further. And there he took a step towards me, so I'm going to walk away now. An even earlier step that you can do to that would be as soon as, their attention goes on you, you move away a bit and things like that. But obviously his attention's just on me the whole time now, sussing out what I'm doing. So now I'm a bit further away, the pressure isn't on him so much, to be so worried about me, but he's tentatively taking little steps closer, which is good. I'm not going to move this time because I'm not in his space, and if he comes a bit closer, then I'll move away. I'm just going to move away now. Hey, bud. So now he's a bit worried because I'm in his bubble again, even though he put me there. So if he takes another step now, I'm going to move away again. Something that you can do as well is link that to your positive reinforcement, your conditioned reinforcer. So as I move away, I could say the word good. But because he's coming to me, so, so fervent, so he wants to come to me sort of thing at that point. I'm not going to worry too much about that because it's not a negative thing for him to approach me. Whereas if he was very nervous, on the first couple of days he was here, if I was doing this with him then rather than getting him in the run to treat his eye, I would have linked that condition reinforcer with me moving away, because he would have been standing there snorting at me, sort of worried about me. Whereas now he's had a little bit to do with me. Obviously he's still terrified of me, but he's a lot more open now. Hey, bud. So he's walking away there. I'm going to acknowledge that that he didn't feel comfortable there, even though he approached me. He turned his head away. So I'm going to move out of his way as well, just to release that pressure so that he knows that I'm no threat. Hey, darling. Just going to move away again now that he's taken that step. And you don't want to be launching yourself away. Obviously, that might spook the horse. So I just sort of remove my eyes first, so the pressure from my eyes looking at him. Initially you wouldn't even sort of look at him when you're just sitting there with him. You wouldn't be glaring at him, kind of thing. Hello, darling. But yeah, so now I'm looking at him as he approaches. And I'm going to move away. Oopsie, so that movement freaked him out a bit because he was on edge there because he was so close, even though he put himself in that position. So yeah, it's just you remove your eyes from him, so that's relieving that pressure, and then you head down, that's another level of pressure, and then you can back away and then you can move away. So that's how I sort of go about that. So now I'm just going to stand here. Now that I've moved away a few times and he's getting more comfortable with that, I'm just going to give him a minute to suss me out a bit. So before this, he didn't want to come close enough to sniff me, and just that little bit of approach, like me moving away, it just made that a lot easier for him to get to that next step. And the next step now would be him sniffing me. So he's never come up to me before. We haven't really done this kind of stuff yet. This is their first kind of day of doing this. We did a little bit in the runs, but obviously he couldn't do his own thing then. So he's sniffing me here, just seeing how close he can get before the scary thing does something. So I'm not going to move away because he's so close that would probably freak him out. I'm just going to leave him to do whatever he wants, and then he'll probably back away on his own in a second when he feels uncomfortable. Hey little boy. I've got a treat bag on here because I was wondering how far we would get. And if you read my earlier post, you cheeky. If you read my earlier post, he was eating out of my hand in the run. So now I'm going to offer him that. Good. And then I'm going to move away. So I'm doing essentially the same thing that I was doing in the run. I would give him a treat, say the word good, conditioned reinforcer, and then I'd move away so that all that pressure is released and all he's left with is sort of a memory of something positive when I came up to him. He's sniffing around for scraps. So just to add with this, the halter is on him. I put that on him day one when he was in the run, very slowly and gently. You know, he was very shut down, and a tiny touch would jolt him. So I was very gentle and careful with that, and it took about probably 10 minutes of just very, very slow moving for him to let me put that on, and I've left it on ever since because I've had to use it to treat his eye. But generally you wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put a halter on until they're ready to put the halter on. So even though he's wearing a halter now, I don't recommend you try and do that first, because you're just going to be making it harder for them to trust you. Yeah, bud. Good. So he will probably start, now that he's kind of sussed me out a little bit and he's getting that positive reinforcement, he's probably going to seek me out a little bit more now. And eventually he will, you know, come to me and find me, because he knows that he's only going to be getting something positive out of it and nothing scary or negative. Hey bud. So he's approaching me a lot more confidently than he was before. Good. So I was saying the word good just as he ate the treat when he was in the run when we were doing this kind of thing. So he's very keen on me now, aren't you, bud? But now I'm going to say it when he approaches me. Good. See, that's why I was doing it after he ate the treat before, but so he might not be up to that stage yet, but we'll see how he goes. So then once he's linked the word with the reward, saying the word is what allows him to know, like, the positive thing that's sort of happened, if that makes sense. And obviously if we were just starting today, we'd be linking that a lot more. You know, I would wait until he eats the treat like this. Good. just as he starts to eat it, that's when you say it. So I might keep doing that for a little bit more, but then after that, once he's linked that word with the treat, you want to say the word first. So as soon as he's done the correct thing, which in this case would be approaching me, so once he's gotten to a certain point, you'd say that word and then he'd get the treat, and he'll link those two together. Hi, darling. Hi, darling. Good. And now he's following me. So this is the start of liberty training, using positive reinforcement techniques. Good. So now I'm going to start saying that word before he eats it. He's still uncomfortable getting too close. He obviously just thinks the treat's more important than being scared of me. So I'm just going to let him sniff me a little bit before I reward him for this, and just wait for a little bit of body language telling me that he's a little more relaxed. So there we go. He just licked his lips there. Good. So then you reward that. So you can actually train emotions by using positive reinforcement. This is all sort of subliminal stuff that's happening in the back of the mind. So he's coming much closer now than he was before. Aren't you, darling? Hello. I'm not trying to touch him. I'm not trying to ask him to do anything. I'm not doing anything at all. I'm just standing here still and letting him suss me out. And he's flinging his head around a bit. That means he's a little uncomfortable still. And probably a bit impatient because he wants his treat. So we're just going to give him a minute. Yeah, there he's licking his lips now. Good. And then I'm going to move away. And now he's coming with me. So I'm going to wait for that head tossing to stop before I do anything, especially before I reward. At the very start, it doesn't matter so much, but you want to start shaping behaviours now that he's getting the hang of it. And the behaviour I want to shape is him approaching me relaxed. I'm going to move away now. He moved away from me, so he might be a little uncomfortable there. Sometimes if you wait long enough, they'll become uncomfortable. So if you move away, it's just taking that pressure off. Good. And then you can go from there. So if you take the pressure off, they're more likely to want to come back because they don't feel like you're threatening them in any way at all or asking them to do anything. Wait. Good. So he's started to realize what that word means now. So there's a point in time where you can see it in their face, and when you say the word, some little thing sort of sparks in their head and they understand exactly what that means. Hey, buddy. Good. You don't have to be worried about them getting pushy or, doing that kind of thing. Obviously, if he was coming up to me and trying to bite me or he was trying to push into me, you'd be doing different things. But you can fix all those problems with positive reinforcement. A lot of people think, you're creating problems by bringing treats into the equation, but I've had some very, very food-motivated horses that I have trained to, that would be pushy if they had the chance, and I've trained them to not be using treats and positive reinforcement. You don't always have to do that. You don't always have to use treats. I'm using them every time I say the word good because I'm establishing that connection in his head between the treat and the word. Good. You do want to start training patience pretty quickly. Like, you know, this is pretty much day one for us. Well, it's not really day one. We've obviously had a bit to do with each other, but it's day one of doing this kind of training, you know, out in the open at liberty. Good boy. So, you know, if he was getting in my space, which it would be more likely with a horse that wasn't timid and wasn't, you know, he's obviously scared of me still, even though he's coming right up to me, you know, I wouldn't be able to go and touch him. Good boy. Good boy. Hey. And you don't want to just... Sorry, bud. See, I just moved my hand a little too quick there and it freaked him out. So. But yes, with training patience, you want to just essentially just wait. You know, you're training it in yourself good as much as you are training it in the horse. If you gave him a treat every single time he came close to you and never changed that, it was always every single time, when he did become more confident, he would, you know, expect that treat immediately. Whereas if you wait a little bit and get him to relax and reward the relaxation, he's going to, you know, come up to you and not expect that straight away. He'll know that just being around you is a positive thing, essentially. Good. And then once he's sort of coming up and being relaxed around me, I would then not reward every time. I would move away again and he'd do the same thing again, and then you'd reward, you know, every second time, every now and then, until the point where he would walk up to me on his own without any treats and just want to be near me because he's, you know, linked me to just a positive feeling. So I'm going to leave him now. I'm going to run him into there and treat his eye now, which unfortunately has to be done because, oh, hello darling, because I obviously wouldn't be able to treat his eye at this stage. Good. Without the run. So I'm going to leave him be for a little bit, and then I'm going to go and treat his eye. And he now because we've, you know, done a lot of just chilling out and sort of practicing that, and he's obviously still nervous going into the run and things, but now if I open the gate and just, you know, put the lunge whip to his, just in the air towards his back end, he'll walk straight in there and stop where he's meant to stop, and, you know, I'll lock him in there, and he's totally comfortable with that now, which is really awesome. So it's making things pretty chill for him. So even though it's not ideal having to put him in the run, he's still relaxed while he's doing it. And that's the main thing. So then, good boy. So then I can still treat his eye and also do this kind of stuff, and it shouldn't, you know, it shouldn't make him take a step back in his training by doing that treatment in his eye, because he's relaxed in there anyway. Good boy, darling. Good boy. Boy. Alright, so we'll come back to Kovu again another time and we'll do a little bit more training. So the liberty stuff is, you know, just without that. I'm doing heaps of positive reinforcement, as you know. So pretty much good. I link the word to when he's done something correctly. So depending what you want to teach him, you can sort of
use that word to let him know when he's done something correct, and then you can use that even when you're starting him under saddle if you want to do it like that. It's just a really cool sort of way to tell them that what they're doing is right, exactly at the right time. So timing is really important. So all these little nibbly things, you know, he's a baby, so he's going to do that kind of stuff when you're just sort of playing with him. I've learned a lot from Warwick Schiller about this kind of stuff too. So, you know, if he gets a bit mouthy or something, you pretty much just like rub his muzzle and give him that same kind of thing back. And that seems to, and I did it with another rescue that I had who was a little bit nippy and stuff. He's not nippy, but if he becomes like that, you know, instead of slapping him away or whatever, you just sort of play with the muzzle for a while, and it worked for him. It worked really well, and Warwick Schiller swears by it as well. So you just kind of like rub the muzzle until they're kind of sick of that, and then they just stop doing it over time. So that's a pretty cool thing to practice if he does end up getting a little bit iffy or anything. So the stuff that we've been doing together with the halter, so all this was positive reinforcement. So like when he'd go a bit close to it, I'd say good and take it away, reward him for that. And then he'd get a bit closer, and then his nose would go inside. And he's gotten to the point now where he'll put his whole face in there. Good boy. But he's still learning to get the rope around his pole and stuff, so good. So you want to teach him to keep his head in there a bit longer as well. That'd be the next sort of thing that I would do, is just to like put his head in. See how he's like moving it up and down? If you wait. Good. So even just a second, like he put it in there for just a fraction of a second longer than he normally would. Come on. You reward that, and then it will be like a fraction of a second longer, and then eventually he'll get the idea that he has to put his head in and just stay there without like moving his head up and down. Good. See, like that. He's a very fast learner too. Got a leaf in there. So then once he's doing that, you're kind of making sure he's used to feeling up around here, very gently sort of bringing it over his head and doing it that way, and then rewarding for that. And then eventually you can start practicing like flinging it over, yeah, doing that kind of stuff. Good boy, well done. And then leading, it would be sort of the same thing. So if he shows any fear at all, like I saw that you noticed really well when he was like uncomfortable and you back off a little bit, that's exactly what's great for that. So you're doing that really well already. But it's just if he's uncomfortable with something, instead of keeping the pressure on, like immediately release it, because it just means that he's not ready for that. You've got to break it down a little bit more. So like with leading, if I was to pull him, he'd probably he'd be like, oh, what's that pressure, and pull up a bit. So you want to just really slowly get him used to it, and if he like reacts a bit intensely, it just means he's not ready for that. So yeah, so we'll try that now. So he's used to following me around at liberty. Good. Which is how I always start before the you know, leading training and stuff like that. So when you get to the point of leading him, he's not worried because he's following you anyway, kind of thing. But if he did wig out at something, like just make sure you don't hold on, because that's when it can create problems, because he's like, oh shit, like I'm now trapped and way over threshold, and he just can't really handle that. Yeah, so the next thing that you should probably teach him is just not to beg as well. So he hasn't really realised where the treats come from yet, but usually they'll realise or do this kind of stuff where he's kind of looking around, waiting for it, like rubbing up on you and stuff like that. So all you got to do is just wait. Good. And he just knows. I did this once before and he learnt it in like 5 minutes, but he needs the practice, obviously. So you're just essentially waiting, and if he tries to get them out of the bag, just make sure that you're not, like he can't get them out of the bag. Just wait for him to look away a little bit. So he can do whatever he wants. You don't need to move or push him away or do anything unless obviously it's dangerous, but it's pretty unlikely. Good. And then say that word as soon as he turns away. That word is the key, not the treat. So the word is when he knows exactly what he's done right. Good. See, he's quickly learnt that he needs to have his head over here and not be doing that. And then you want to increase the time that he's looking away. So he's looking away, but because I'm not rewarding him immediately, he's looking back because he's like, what the hell is this? So you got to wait until he's good. When he looks away and then a little fraction of a second more than the last time. Good. And see, he didn't even try to rub on me that time, so I'm going to reward that because that's a really good thing to reinforce. Good. So he's got that already. Good boy. Good. So he's learnt in, 1 minute not to beg. So that, you want to do that every single time. So every time you give him a treat, he's looking away from you now. Also, now that he knows the word is linked to the treat, you don't have to give him a treat every single time. So you want to make that less and less now that he's used to it. So I've been doing it pretty much every single time to get him used to the positive reinforcement thing, but now that he's good at it, I would wait. And every couple of times or something, and then you make it less and less so that the word is more valuable than the actual treat in the end. Good. Now that he's learned all the basics, patience is what you need to learn next, because if you don't learn that pretty much straight up, it's going to become a problem later. So he's just doing that. Don't punish things like that, because it's just like him doing his thing, you know, like if you start punishing stuff like that, he doesn't really know why, and it just creates problems. So don't reward it, obviously, but the lack of reward is going to teach him a lot. So you can do whole sessions without the treats and stuff as well, but it's good to just get him used to getting one like every now and then, so that he doesn't just think, okay, all I'm trying to do is get treats. Like he starts to think about what he's doing and he starts to really enjoy the work with you. So after a while, he'll care a lot less about the treats. Like even now, just standing here. Good. And that big size and things like that, you want to reward that. You're rewarding relaxation and patience and just standing there, because standing there is like the biggest, most important part of horse training. Just relaxed standing. It's such a underrated thing, but it just makes all the difference. So yeah, if you can get that, then you're home sweet. But I'll make some more videos with Caesar just on other stuff that you can do in the future, like when you start picking out hooves and stuff. If you want to do this positive reinforcement kind of stuff, I'll make the videos based on that. But if you've got your own way of doing stuff, like just do it how you do it. But yeah, I think it just works really well, and he learns really fast with it. And any bad behavior that comes up, you can train it out of him with positive reinforcement. So like, you know, begging, for example, if he gets pushy or anything like that, like you can fix that using positive reinforcement. It's all just about patience and like letting him learn to relax pretty much.